Why she scrolls her phone in bed instead of touching you? A lot of men think the main problem in relationships is sex. They believe the issue begins when intimacy disappears. But in reality, most bedroom problems start long before anyone touches the bed. They start in very small moments that most couples barely notice. For example, you go to bed together. You are lying there next to each other. But instead of turning toward you, your partner reaches for her phone. She starts scrolling messages, Instagram, maybe TikTok, and you are lying there thinking, she has energy for her phone, but not for me. Nothing dramatic happened, no argument, no rejection, but something still feels wrong. And if you've ever experienced a moment like this, then what you are about to hear might feel very familiar. So let's slow this down for a moment and break down what is actually happening here. Someone recently sent me this situation, and on the surface it sounded very simple. He wrote, every night we go to bed and the same thing happens. She tunes to her side, opens her phone, and starts scrolling. No cuddling, no kissing, no small moments of connection, just the light of the screen and silence. And then he wrote something that many men quietly feel, but rarely say out loud. I feel invisible. Now, here's the interesting part. This couple is not constantly fighting. There is no huge conflict. During the day, everything looks normal. They talk, they function, they live together. From the outside, everything looks fine. But at night, something changes. The emotional connection just disappears. It's like the moment they enter the bedroom, the relationship quietly shuts down. And sometimes the bed stops feeling like a place of closeness. It starts feeling more like a Wi Fi zone. Two people sharing the same space, but not really sharing the moment. And this kind of distance almost never begins with big drama. It usually begins with something much quieter. Small moments of disconnection that slowly repeat night after night. What this feels like for men. Now, from the outside, these moments might look small, but for many men, it feels much bigger than it appears. Because when physical closeness starts disappearing, men often interpret it in a very personal way. It can feel like rejection. It can feel like something changed. Sometimes it even feels like a quiet loss of attraction. And inside the mind, questions begin to appear. Did I do something wrong? Did something change between us? Is she not attracted to me anymore? Or sometimes, an even heavier thought. Is this just how relationships become over time? And here's the important part. Most men don't say these thoughts out loud. They don't sit down and say, hey, I feel disconnected. Instead, they usually react in one of two ways. Some men simply stop trying. They stop initiating touch. They stop initiating intimacy because repeated rejection is painful. Other men move in the opposite direction. They become frustrated, maybe sarcastic, maybe emotionally distant. Not because they want conflict, but because they don't know how to interpret what is happening. And when closeness disappears slowly over time, many men begin hearing only one message in their mind. She does not want me anymore, even when the real situation is much more complex than that. But here's the part most couples never actually see. When moments like this repeat over time, a pattern slowly begins to form. At first, it looks like something small. Maybe she tunes away because she is tired. Maybe her mind is still full of work. Maybe she just wants a few minutes to disconnect from the day. So she reaches for her phone. For her, it may feel harmless, just a small moment of escape. But on the other side of the bed, something else happens. He feels rejected. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet feeling of maybe she does not want me right now. And from there, the reactions usually go in one of two directions. Some men push a little harder. They move closer. They try to create intimacy. But if she's already tired or emotionally closed, that can feel like pressure. So she pulls away even more. Other men react differently. Instead of pushing, they withdraw. They stop initiating. They become quieter, more distant. And now, something interesting happens. Both people are reacting to the situation, but neither of them feels understood. She feels pressure, he feels rejection. So she creates more distance, and he becomes even more disconnected. And slowly, something that started as a small moment turns into a repeating pattern. Not because either person wanted distance, but because the pattern formed quietly over time. And this kind of distance usually does not happen all at once. It tends to grow step by step, almost like climbing a ladder. The first step is usually very subtle, a little less touching, maybe fewer casual hugs, maybe fewer spontaneous moments of contact. Then comes the second step, less playful energy, less teasing, less flirting, those small sparks that used to exist between you. Step 3, fewer kisses. Not because anyone decided to stop kissing, but because the rhythm of connection slowly changed. Then comes step 4, less sexual initiation. Not because desire disappeared, but because uncertainty started growing. And finally, step 5, silence. Nobody really talks about the distance anymore. Both people feel it, but neither one knows how to address it. And by the time couples finally recognize the problem, they are often already near the top of that ladder. And in that point, even something simple like a goodnight hug can feel strangely complicated. Almost like a small diplomatic negotiation. Who moves first? What it means? Will it be welcomed or rejected? And this is why bedroom problems rarely begin in the bedroom. They begin with the slow disappearance of small moments of connection. The challenge is that most couples don't notice this process while it's happening because the signals are very quiet. They don't look dramatic, they don't feel like a relationship crisis. They just look like small changes. For example, less physical touch during the day, fewer casual hugs in the kitchen, less flirting in conversation, less playful teasing, less laughter together. Not because the relationship became hostile, but because the energy between two people slowly became more neutral. And then something else often appears. More phones, more screens, more small escapes into digital space instead of sharing a moment together. And again, none of these things look dramatic on their own. No big argument, no clear conflict, just a slow shift in the emotional atmosphere of the relationship. A little less warmth, a little more distance. And when that shift repeats often enough, intimacy slowly fades. Which is why, in many relationships, the loss of intimacy does not begin with sex. It begins with the quiet disappearance of small rituals that once created a connection. And here's the part where many men often misunderstand the situation. When intimacy starts fading, the first conclusion many men reach is she is not attracted to me anymore. Sometimes that is true, but very often that's not the full picture because in many relationships, the real issue is not attraction. It's nervous system overload, long workdays, mental stress, emotional exhaustion, or small frustrations that were never fully expressed. All of these things accumulate quietly, and when someone reaches the end of a long stressful day, their nervous system often wants only one thing: to shut down. For many people, scrolling a phone is the fastest way to do that. It requires almost no emotional effort, no vulnerability, no conversation, just a small moment of escape. And this is where an important difference often appears. For many women, emotional safety comes before physical openness. When they feel relaxed, seen, and emotionally connected, physical intimacy often follows naturally. But when the nervous system is tired, overloaded, or slightly guarded, opening physically can feel difficult. Not because the attraction disappeared, but because the system is simply exhausted. So your partner may not actually be rejecting you. Your brain might simply be running on one-person battery mode. And in that moment, scrolling a phone can feel easier than opening emotionally. Now, here's where many men accidentally make the situation worse. Not because they want conflict, but because they are reacting to the feeling of rejection. The first reaction is often pressure. Questions like, why don't you want sex anymore? Or, you are always tired. But pressure rarely creates desire. In fact, it usually creates the opposite: more tension, more defensiveness. Another common reaction is sarcasm. Small comments like, oh, of course, you are on your phone again, or I guess Instagram is more interesting than me. Those words may sound light, but emotionally, they often land like criticism. And criticism almost never creates openness. The third reaction is emotional withdrawal. Some men simply stop trying. They stop initiating touch. They stop initiating intimacy. Not because they stopped caring, but because repeated rejection hurts. So they protect themselves by pulling back. And now the cycle becomes even stronger. Pressure creates distance. Distance creates more distance. Which is why one important truth is worth remembering. Pressure rarely creates attraction. Connection does. So, if you actually want to change this dynamic, the starting point usually is not sex, it is connection. Because intimacy is often the result of connection, not the starting point. That means rebuilding small rituals first: a hug before sleep, a few minutes of real conversation, eye contact, playfulness, moments of lightness that remind both people that the relationship is still alive. And one of the most powerful shifts is surprisingly simple: touch without expectation. Not touching because it must lead to sex, but touching because you enjoy being close. This removes pressure, and when pressure disappears, emotional safety slowly begins to return. Sometimes intimacy does not come back through big dramatic gestures. Sometimes it returns through a very small moments: a laugh together, a gentle touch, a few minutes of genuine presence. And sometimes the path back to intimacy begins with something surprisingly simple: putting the phone down before the relationship does. There is an important truth about long term relationships. Closeness does not stay alive automatically. At the beginning, connection feels effortless, attraction feels natural, touch feels spontaneous. But over time, life becomes busy: work, stress, responsibilities. And if we are not careful, connection slowly moves to the background. Not because love disappeared, but because attention did. Relationships rarely lose intimacy overnight. They lose it gradually, through small moments of disconnection. But the good news is this: the same process can work in the other direction. Connection can also return gradually through small moments of presence, small moments of warmth, small moments of attention. Because closeness is not automatic, it's something two people create again and again. And this is exactly why every relationship situation is unique. One short video can help you see patterns. It can help you understand what might be happening. But real relationships are always more complex. That's why deeper case breakdowns, real examples, and real discussions can help you go much further. This video is just the beginning. Now you have more clarity, you have a direction. But if you want to explore more real relationship cases, or even receive a breakdown of your own situation, you can find everything through the link in the description below. There you can explore the full case library, join deeper discussions, or submit your own situation for analysis. Because sometimes one small shift in awareness can completely change the dynamic of a relationship. And that shift often begins with simply understanding what is really happening.